Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, Holy Father's health. Pope Francis is in the hospital for surgery. We have a report from Rome. Cloudy outlook. Concerns over the air quality in much of the United States. Following the trail, more Republicans are throwing their hats into the ring for the 2024 presidential election. And tie game. An NFL player makes a pro-life statement at the White House. We'll explain these stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, Pope Francis is awake and alert after undergoing 3-hour abdominal surgery today in Rome. He was admitted to the Gemelli University Hospital right after his talk to pilgrims at the Vatican. According to the Holy See officials, the surgery became necessary due to a painful hernia. Pope Francis will remain in the hospital for several days. Audiences with the Holy Father have been suspended until June 18th. However, doctors say following the surgery, Pope Francis is in good spirits. Joining us now from Rome is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, great to see you. Can you tell us more about the surgery?
Sure, Tracy. So we're here at the Gemelli Clinic, one of the largest private hospitals in Europe, and it's the preferred medical facility for pontiffs. Again, Pope Francis was admitted to this clinic today after the general audience, and he underwent abdominal surgery in the early afternoon Rome time under general anesthesia. According to the official Vatican news channels, this operation was planned by the Pope's medical team in recent days. Vaticano spokesperson Matteo Bruno confirmed today that it became necessary due to a hernia that was causing recurrent painful symptoms. Pope Francis had a so-called laparotomy, which means his abdomen was opened and later reconstructed with prosthetic material. He's expected to stay in the hospital for at least 10 days. All appointments until the 18th of June were canceled.
And Andreas, I understand that yesterday the Pope went to the hospital. What more do we know about that?
So it's true. Yesterday he came here at Gemelli as well, and he stayed here for 40 minutes, and probably it was this appointment with the doctors that confirmed the need for yet another surgery. Pope Francis, who is already 86 years old, underwent colon surgery just 2 years ago in July 2021. The 3-hour-long medical intervention then served to relieve a restriction of the colon, of which a part was later removed. Memorably, Pope Francis was hospitalized for 4 days also this year in March. It was also after a general audience that he had to be taken to the Gemelli Clinic here after a severe lung infection. The pontiff also was seen in a wheelchair because of his knee pains. And he spent a lot of time in this wheelchair in this year already. He told Italian bishops, by the way, that he didn't want to have his knee operated just for fear of general anesthesia. He supposedly didn't cope too well following his colon surgery.
And before leaving the hospital this morning, as we know, Pope Francis held the general audience as usual, and he also venerated relics. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so today is St. Teresa of the Child Jesus' 150th birthday. She's one of Pope Francis's favorite saints, and before he left for the hospital, he had the chance to venerate her relics, which were present at the general audience today. And in his tweet for @Pontifex, Pope Francis asked for prayers to obtain the grace to love Jesus as St. Therese loved him, and also the grace to offer Jesus our trials and our sorrows as she did, so that he might be loved by all people. And maybe we can do this together now, Tracy, as well, and pray for Pope Francis and his well-being.
Yes, absolutely. Andreas, thank you so much. We appreciate it. God bless you. Pope Francis has named 2 new auxiliary bishops for the Diocese of San Diego, California. Father Michael Pham and Father Felipe Palidio immigrated to the U.S. when they were just both teenagers. Both say they are deeply honored. The Diocese of San Diego serves more than 1.3 million Catholics. On the campaign trail, 3 new candidates joined the race for White House, including former Vice President Mike Pence, and the presidential hopefuls are already addressing their faith and key topics like abortion. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
That's right, Tracy. As President Joe Biden is determined to win the White House again in 2024, tonight a growing list of Republican contenders is eager to show him the door. Former Vice President Mike Pence makes it official.
That's why today, before God and my family, I'm announcing that I'm running for President of the United States of America.
Before his presidential announcement in Iowa, he released this nearly 3-minute-long video.
I believe in the American people, and I have faith. God is not done with America yet, and together we can bring this country back, and the best days for the greatest nation on earth are yet to come. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
And on the same day, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum tells his supporters the country needs a leader focused on the economy, energy, and national security.
And that is why today I'm officially announcing I'm running for the President of the United States of America.
Just last night in New Hampshire, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie jumped in as well. He told an audience Roe v. Wade was constitutionally flawed and that Dobbs was the right decision.
And so I think what Dobbs did was exactly what it should have done, which is to say it's not in the Constitution, and as a result, we send this back to the states for them to decide.
In direct contrast to that, the Biden administration. Vice President Kamala Harris released a video of her sitting down with a pro-abortion OB/GYN, pushing for a federal law that protects what the vice president calls reproductive care in every state.
And it's a shame that in this year of our Lord 2023, people are trying to take us back.
And in the White House press briefing room today.
Good afternoon. I don't have any call to read out, but obviously our thoughts are with the Pope, and certainly we are hoping that he has a full and quick recovery.
Now, President Biden had no on-camera events for today. Tomorrow, he'll host the British Prime Minister here at the White House to discuss the war in Ukraine. Also tonight, your grocery bill. The White House says grocery inflation, that is showing signs of cooling, pointing to egg prices falling, for example, while acknowledging those egg prices are still way too high compared to last year. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, now we go to Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics. Tom, welcome back. Always great to see you. A lot to get to, but first, it has been quite the week in terms of Republicans throwing their hats into the ring for the 2024 presidential election, including former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and most recently today, former Vice President Mike Pence. Your thoughts on this large field of candidates, which seems to be growing day by day, and what do you think this signals?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, unlike 8 years ago, when at this point in time there were just as many candidates, if not more, and they were all kind of bunched together, this is a completely different landscape. It's Donald Trump at the top. He's ahead by 30 points. You've got Ron DeSantis in second place at about 22%, and then everybody else who's at 4.5% and below. Mike Pence is about 4%. Chris Christie's at like 1%. These candidates have gotten in the race. Christie in particular, but even Mike Pence attacked Donald Trump today, said he's not fit to be president. I mean, they are determined to take Donald Trump down. And so we'll see. It wasn't possible in 2016. But again, this is a different race. Donald Trump is not the new, person, the sort of interesting candidate. He's got a history. And so while the dynamic is radically different, I think as far as a lot of Republicans in this race are concerned, the mission is the same, which is to try and knock off Donald Trump.
Yeah, and meanwhile, on the Democrat side, scholar and activist Cornel West said he's entering the race as a third-party candidate. Kind of a wild card, but we have seen this thing before. That said, what type of impact do you think this will have on the race, and are you surprised by his announcement?
I mean, every cycle you've got a couple of candidates that jump in as sort of, as a third party. Cornel West is doing it via the People's Party. Not going to have any impact on this race whatsoever. I think the more important, more interesting storyline on the Democratic side is Robert F. Kennedy, who continues to generate media attention and buzz. He's making some Democrats nervous, continues to focus on things that I think, the Democratic establishment has really rallied around and is trying to protect Joe Biden, trying to keep him from facing a significant challenge. And you've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. polling at about 10 to 15%. You've got Marianne Williamson polling at 10%. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, on the Democratic side, Biden with his age issues and other things, he's likely the nominee, but there are real concerns.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too. Meantime, in D.C., Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy is facing backlash from members of his own party, specifically the Freedom Caucus, over the debt deal that he brokered. Tom, how do you see this all playing out?
Well, McCarthy said he was kind of surprised by this. The revolt that took place is taking place. I mean, the House is effectively paralyzed right now in protest to his deal on the debt ceiling. I think a lot of Republicans saw that as a win, but a lot of the more conservative members of the House, they said that he promised spending cuts that he did not deliver on, and they want to see him deliver on those. So, McCarthy has done a pretty good job of managing a very small majority at this point, but he remains, just by virtue of the way that he came into office, on tenuous, sort of thin ice. Any one of these members of the Freedom Caucus could call for a motion to vacate. They've threatened that sort of vaguely. They haven't been very upfront about it, but it is always lurking in the background. I think McCarthy's doing his best to manage his circumstances right now and get the House, sort of everybody back singing from the same sheet of music on the Republican side.
Yeah, something else I want to touch on. Today, former Attorney General Bill Barr, he clapped back at Maryland Democrat Senator Jamie Raskin, who claimed that a bribery investigation involving President Biden during his days in the Obama White House was shut down by Barr in 2020. Tom, what more do you know about this?
Well, I mean, this is significant. I mean, Bill Barr is known as a straight shooter and a guy who was an effective. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't like him anymore, but he was for a long time. He did like him, and I think Republicans. He was a very well-respected guy in Washington. Saying that Jamie Raskin, the representative from Democrat representative from Maryland, effectively lied to the public the other day when he said that this investigation was shut down. So that's flatly untrue. And you've also got Rep. Comer, who's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who said that basically Raskin has lied too. He's misleading the public about the circumstances and background surrounding this FBI document that alleges a bribery claim against Joe Biden back when he was in office. So I think we're going to learn more about this. I think it's a significant development, and I think this keeps this front and center in the news for the foreseeable future.
Tom, before I let you go, what else are you tracking? What's on your radar?
So we are currently conducting a poll from Real Clear Opinion Research right now on national security, and we're going to be releasing the results of that next week around the upcoming NATO meeting. And so we'll talk about what Americans see as the primary national security threat to the United States. So there'll be some really interesting data coming out on Real Clear Opinion Research next week.
All right, going to leave right there. Tom, always great to be with you and get your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Tracy.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including threats from Beijing. Tension between China and Taiwan continue to grow as a significant anniversary draws near. And don't mess with my children. How parents in Honduras are speaking out against gender ideology in public schools. Anniversary of the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests, the threat of war between China and Taiwan continues to grow. Some believe war is exactly what China is preparing for. So U.S. lawmakers are taking steps to get ready just in case. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
Lawmakers tell me for far too long the threat from China has been put on the back burner, yet the communist country continues to show hostility and aggressive behavior towards the United States and Taiwan, which they believe is part of China. California Republican Congressman Mike Garcia tells me he's concerned the U.S. lacks the capacity to meet the threat.
I mean, it's a threat. Honestly, we didn't take seriously enough for the last 15 to 20 years, and we've shown that we have fallen behind relative to China in many domains. And I think there's overall a better awareness of this China threat, but not necessarily the capacity that we need to be at.
The U.S. House China Select Committee recently advanced several bipartisan recommendations to better prepare the United States and Taiwan for any possible military conflict.
If the Tiananmen Square massacre is an indictment of the CCP, it's also an indictment in some ways of us. The mask slipped. We saw the CCP's true, brutal, paranoid face on live TV, and what did we do? We rewarded them.
The committee recently held a roundtable commemorating the 34th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. During the meeting, a Chinese human rights activist who spent 18 years in a communist prison gave lawmakers a stern warning.
Most Chinese people, in their observation, they believe Xi Jinping is preparing for war.
The Chinese dissident says until democracy comes to the communist country, activists like Catholic Jimmy Lai will never be released from prison. Meanwhile, U.S. military forces continue to have run-ins with China, the latest involving a Chinese military ship, which almost crashed into a U.S. Navy destroyer, and a Chinese fighter flew into the path of an American reconnaissance plane over the South China Sea. The White House calls it dangerous.
There was absolutely no need for the PLA to act as aggressively as they did. It won't be long before somebody gets hurt. That's the concern with these unsafe and unprofessional intercepts.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to China for talks in the coming weeks. This comes after a previously scheduled trip was scrapped after a suspected Chinese spy balloon was shot down. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, air quality in much of the United States is at levels considered very poor. This as smoke from dozens of wildfires in Canada travels south into the U.S. Public schools across the Northeast are canceling outdoor activities. New York City has reached the worst air quality in recorded history as an orange haze blankets the sky. Meanwhile, in Quebec, people are being evacuated as firefighters are still working to control the fires. More than 4,000 congregations have split from the United Methodist Church this year. Many see the church as supporting social issues like same-sex marriage. The UMC does not allow the ordination of same-sex attracted people, but its website says that it may change its teaching on that issue. Well, hundreds of parents in Honduras are speaking out against gender ideology teaching in public schools there. The For Our Children movement is a group of around 500 people. They believe in the rights of parents to educate their children according to their, quote, values, principles, and beliefs. The group's slogan is, "Don't mess with my children." Up next on EWTN News Nightly, pro-lifers attacked. New developments in the vicious assault of two pro-lifers in Baltimore. And an NFL star advocates for the unborn at the White House. In a story that we brought you last week about two pro-lifers who were brutally attacked outside of a Planned Parenthood business in Baltimore. One of those men, 73-year-old Mark Crosby, was taken to the hospital after he was punched and kicked in the face with extreme force, leaving him with a large hematoma as well as head and neck pain. Mr. Crosby's lawyer says that she has spoken with Baltimore City detectives about the incident that left blood on the sidewalks. So far, no arrests have been made. And joining us now is Olivia Summers, Senior Litigation Counsel for ACLJ. She is representing both of the men who were assaulted outside the Planned Parenthood in Baltimore. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. For those who may not be familiar, can you tell us a little bit more about this incident and what exactly led up to this horrific assault?
Sure. So we're representing Mark Crosby and Dick Schaefer, and they regularly go down to the Planned Parenthood in Baltimore and stand out front. Mr. Schaefer is a sidewalk counselor. He talks to people about what abortion is and the other options that are available to them, including adoption and parenting. So he's down at the center outside of Planned Parenthood 5 days a week for about 2 hours every day. And Mr. Crosby goes down there, once in a while. I think he goes on Fridays, generally speaking. He's not a counselor or a protester or anything. He just stands out front and he'll hand out blessed rosaries to anybody who asks. So on this day, they were both outside of Planned Parenthood. They talked to one another briefly, kind of chatting on the sidewalk, and then they were approached by a guy who had a conversation with Mr. Schaefer. He was upset with them being down there and accused them of making people feel shame, and said that they shouldn't be down there. They shouldn't stop women from going in to get abortions. And there's a brief exchange where Mr. Schaefer said, yes, like God forgives us. There is forgiveness for everybody, including people who have had abortions. But, these are babies. So the guy got progressively more angry, and then he attacked Mr. Schaefer, knocked him over into a concrete planter. Mr. Schaefer was knocked out. He was unconscious for a while. And then Mr. Crosby saw the incident occur and ran to help Mr. Schaefer. And in the process, this man turned on him, punched him, knocked him to the ground, punched him in the face, and then viciously kicked him in the head. And then he walked off.
Terrible. It's unbelievable. How's Mark doing now?
Mark is doing pretty well. He's in pretty good spirits for what happened. He and Mr. Crosby both had post-concussion syndrome. And then, of course, Mark had severe trauma to his face. He has a fractured plate in his face, which is going to need to be replaced. He was blind in his eye. He is recovering his eyesight, which is amazing. He's very happy about that. He has a couple fractured fingers and bruises all over his body. He looks terrible, to be quite frank, but he is in good spirits.
Yeah, I'm curious, is this assault, is it being classified as a hate crime? And as far as the investigation, what's the latest on that?
So this is still obviously in the beginning stages. We talked to the detectives. They did tell us that there's a possibility this will be investigated as of the attack and also the reason for the attack. So there is that possibility. And then, of course, we are looking at our own civil side of the claims that we can bring against man.
Yeah, and how do you see this case playing out? You know, what do you want to see come from it?
We want to see this man held accountable for his actions. This violence against these elderly men was not just unwarranted, but it was way beyond the pale. You know, it's hard to watch. It's hard to see these kind of attacks, and we want to see this man held responsible for his actions, because it is not okay to go out there and attack anyone. And people who do this sort of thing should be held accountable. So whether that's through civil repercussions or, criminal repercussions or both.
We have, Olivia, about a minute so we're left. But what type of impact do you think this may have for pro-lifers who pray outside of abortion clinics? I mean, what do you want to see happen from your case, and anything else you'd like our viewers to know about?
Sure, absolutely. I think this it's created concern for people who go outside, because this kind of violence and tension is escalated across the country. Obviously, we've seen pro-life clinics attacked, firebombed, spray painted. So we've seen this violence escalating against the pro-life movement. And I think there is concern that, people may be targets of this kind of violence, but it also, encourages people to go out there and make a difference as well. So there are these people who go out and stand in front of Planned Parenthood. They're staunch advocates for life, and they believe that, this is murder of unborn children, and they believe that these children are worth protecting. So they go out there and they stand firm to protect them. And of course, we want to see them be able to exercise their free speech and religious freedom rights, and we will stand firm with them in that. And of course, we want to let anybody know that if anything happens to them that's similar or not, we don't want anything to happen to them, but they can always reach out to us, and we're there to help.
All right, great. Olivia, thanks so much for talking to us. We appreciate it. We'll continue to follow this case and the story. Thank you. God bless.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Finally tonight, the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs were honored at the White House earlier this week, and one player made a pro-life message without saying a word. Instead, kicker Harrison Butker wore a custom-made necktie. It was complete with a Latin phrase meaning, quote, protect the most vulnerable. The pro-lifer, also a faithful Catholic, later released a statement. He said in part, quote, I want to give the unborn a voice at a place where every effort has been made to allow and normalize the tragic termination of their lives. Butker made the winning field goal in the Super Bowl victory over the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I thank you for watching tonight. And remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.